I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. When my son handed me a stack of senior living brochures with my name written on top, I just smiled and said, "I'll think about it, sweetie." What he didn't know, that same night I opened my safe and pulled out the house documents with only my name on them. They wanted me gone, but this was my house. The one my husband and I built with our own hands over 40 years. If they wanted war, they picked the wrong woman. Because at 67, after 35 years as an ER nurse, I know something most people don't. The quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous. The knife froze mid-air butter halfway across the bread. Mom should move out. The baby and I need peace and quiet. She's too much. Caroline's voice drifted in from the living room. Soft, sweet, the kind of voice that sounds like honey but cuts like a blade underneath. I stood in what used to be my kitchen, holding my breath. The morning light came through the new beige curtains. Caroline had insisted on changing them last month. Brighter for the baby, she'd said, smiling that smile that never quite reached her eyes. Through the doorway I could see my son Dan, 35 years old, 6 feet tall, but in that moment he looked small, hunched over on the sofa we'd bought when he was in high school. His head nodded slowly, agreeing with his wife like he always did now. "I understand, sweetheart," he murmured. "I'll talk to her." My hand trembled slightly. Not from fear, not even from anger. From the cold clarity that comes when you finally see the truth you've been avoiding for 6 months. I set the knife down carefully, made no sound. 35 years in the ER taught me how to stay calm when the blood starts flowing, how to observe, assess, and act when everyone else is screaming. Caroline appeared in the kitchen doorway moments later. 29 years old, 7 months pregnant, her hand resting on her belly in that practiced way she had, like she was posing for a magazine cover about motherhood. "Morning, Mom," her voice bright as sunshine. "Did you sleep well? Like a baby," I said, matching her smile. "Coffee decaf only. You know the baby?" Of course. The baby. Everything was about the baby now. The baby needed quiet mornings, so I shouldn't make phone calls before noon. The baby was sensitive to smells, so I couldn't cook my favorite garlic chicken anymore. The baby, the baby, the baby. I poured her decaf and watched her add 3 sugars. The diamond on her left hand caught the light, 2 carats Dan had told me proudly when he proposed. I'd helped him buy it, though Caroline didn't know that. She thought Dan could afford it on his software engineer salary alone. "Mom, can we talk for a minute?" Dan appeared behind Caroline, his hand protective on her shoulder. In his other hand, a stack of glossy brochures. Cream-colored, expensive paper. He set them on the counter in front of me. Maple Ridge Senior Living, the top one read, "Where your peaceful chapter begins." My name was written across the cover in Dan's handwriting. Margaret Sullivan. My full legal name, like I was already enrolled. "What's this?" I kept my voice light. Curious, not confrontational. Dan's eyes couldn't meet mine. He looked at the coffee pot, at Caroline, at the new beige curtains, anywhere but at his mother. "Caroline and I have been talking," he started. "With the baby coming in 2 months, we're going to need more space. And Mom, you've been working so hard maintaining this big house. You deserve to rest. Maple Ridge is only 20 minutes away." Caroline added, her voice gentle as a lullaby. "They have transportation for shopping and doctor appointments. A garden club. Friday night dances. You'd make so many friends, Mom." Mom. She called me Mom, but the word felt hollow, like she was reading it from a script. I picked up the brochure, flipped through the pages. Smiling seniors in yoga class. A woman with silver hair reading by a window with a view of, I squinted, a parking lot, not a lake. In the corner, Caroline had circled one particular room layout in red pen. A studio apartment, 300 square feet. "This looks lovely," I said, setting it down. "I'll think about it." The relief on Dan's face was immediate. He actually sagged a little, like he'd been holding his breath for days. "That's great, Mom. Really great. Take your time." But Caroline's eyes narrowed for just a fraction of a second. She'd expected resistance. Tears, maybe, or anger. My calm acceptance unsettled her, though she hid it quickly behind another smile. "Well, I should rest," she said, touching her belly again. "The doctor says I need extra sleep in the 3rd trimester. It's so important for the baby's development." They left me alone in the kitchen. I heard their footsteps on the stairs, the creak of the floorboards above my head. In the bedroom that used to belong to me and Rob, I stood there for a long time looking around what used to be my kitchen. The blue ceramic dishes I'd collected for 30 years gone. replaced with stark white plates from some trendy store downtown. More modern, Caroline had explained when I'd asked. The family photos that used to line the walls vanished. My wedding picture with Rob, Dan's graduation, Rob's memorial portrait from his service. Caroline had temporarily stored them in the basement. 6 months ago. They were still there, gathering dust in cardboard boxes. Even the small things had changed. The hand towels Rob's mother had embroidered. The wooden spoon holder I'd brought back from our trip to Vermont. The calendar with the lighthouse photos that Rob and I used to mark our date nights on. All gone. All replaced with Caroline's vision of what a home should be. I picked up my coffee cup, one of the few blue ones I'd managed to hide before they all disappeared, and walked to the window. Lake Lakewood stretched out before me, the morning sun making the water shimmer like scattered diamonds. 40 years ago, Rob and I had stood on this exact spot looking at raw land and dreaming. We'll build something here that lasts. He'd set his arm around my shoulders. Something our kids and grandkids will know. A real home. We'd laid every brick ourselves. Well, Rob had done most of the brickwork. I'd been better with the interior, the planning, the details. But together we'd built this 2-story house on the shore with windows facing the lake and a garden where I still grew Rob's favorite lavender. 8 years since his heart attack. 8 years of living here alone, keeping everything just the way we'd made it. Until Dan asked if Caroline could move in just temporarily while they looked for a bigger place. That was 10 months ago. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app. A habit from nursing document everything. Started a new note with today's date. March 28th. Found senior living brochures with my name on them. Dan and Caroline want me to move out. Caroline's reason needs space for the baby. Observed Caroline's hand positioning on belly, performative, not natural. Dan avoided eye contact, guilt, fear, both, decision, begin evidence collection. Do not react emotionally. They want me gone from my own house. I need to know why. I saved the note, poured the rest of my coffee down the sink, and went to Rob's office. Rob's office still smelled like him somehow. Pine and coffee, and that subtle cologne he wore every day for 40 years. I'd kept this room exactly as he'd left it. His desk, his bookshelves, his reading chair by the window where he used to review blueprints. The safe was behind a painting of us on our 30th anniversary. Rob had insisted on hiding it there. Not for security, he'd joked. Just so I can see your beautiful face every time I open it. I moved the painting aside and entered the combination. Our wedding date. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside, everything was exactly where it should be. Rob had been meticulous about important documents. Years of working as a contractor taught him that paper trails matter more than promises. I pulled out the manila folder labeled House. The deed sat on top. Thick paper official stamps dated 40 years ago. I ran my finger along the typed words. Owner Margaret Elizabeth Sullivan, not Margaret and Daniel Sullivan. Not Margaret and Caroline Mitchell Sullivan. Just my name. Sole ownership. Rob had put the house in my name when he got his diagnosis, making sure I'd be protected if anything happened. You built this house with me, Maggie, he'd said, holding my hand in that hospital bed. It's yours, not ours. Yours. Don't ever let anyone tell you different. Under the deed, property insurance. Up to date, paid through next year. Property tax records, I'd never missed a payment. The will Rob had drawn up naming me as the sole beneficiary of everything. And my own will updated 5 years ago, leaving the house to Dan. But that was a will, not a deed. Dan didn't own this house, wouldn't own it until I died, and I had no intention of dying anytime soon. I spread the documents across Rob's desk and photographed each one with my phone, backed them up to the cloud. Then I pulled out my laptop and drafted an email. To Alan Foster Foster and Associates Family Law from Margaret Sullivan Allen. It's been a while since we spoke, since you helped me with the paperwork after Rob passed. I hope you and Patricia are doing well. I need to confirm something about the Lakewood property. Can we meet sometime this week? I want to make absolutely certain about my ownership status and rights. I'll explain more in person. Please let me know your availability. Best, Maggie. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Alan had been Rob's friend since high school. A good lawyer, but more importantly, a good man. He'd guided me through the legal maze after Rob died, making sure everything was properly documented. He'd understand without me having to spell out that something was wrong. My phone buzzed. Alan's reply came through in less than 5 minutes. Maggie. Of course. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'll have my assistant pull your files tonight. Come to the office. "Everything okay, Alan?" I typed back. "We'll explain tomorrow. Thank you." Upstairs, I could hear Caroline moving around. The old floorboards in my bedroom, my and Rob's bedroom, creaked in that familiar pattern. She was pacing, probably on the phone with someone, her voice too low for me to make out words, but the cadence all wrong for talking to Dan. I opened my laptop's calendar and started a new document. Called it Incident Log. 35 years in the ER, I'd documented thousands of patient cases. Observed symptoms, recorded conversations, noted patterns. A good nurse knows that what seems small and insignificant in the moment can become critical evidence later. I created a simple table with columns: date, time, person, action, reason given, red flags, evidence. Then I started filling it in, working backwards through the last 6 months. November 15th, 3:00 p.m. Caroline suggested changing living room curtains. Brighter for the baby. First mention of baby-related changes. November 22nd. Morning, Caroline removed my blue ceramic dishes. More consistent look. My belongings being replaced December 1st. Evening, Caroline moved wedding photo to basement storing so it won't get dusty. Family history being erased. December 8th, 10:00 a.m. Caroline complained about my phone call volume. Baby needs quiet mornings. Controlling my behavior in my own house. January 5th afternoon. Dan slept at office instead of home. Caroline needs rest. Dan choosing Caroline's comfort over normal family life. January 20th evening. Caroline redecorated master bedroom. We need a nursery space, aching over master bedroom. That was mine and Rob's. The list went on. Page after page of small changes, each one seemingly reasonable in isolation. But together they painted a clear picture. Caroline wasn't just living in my house. She was erasing me from it. Methodically, deliberately. One curtain, one dish, one photo at a time. And now she wanted me gone entirely. The question was why? What was the rush? Dan and Caroline had good jobs. They could afford their own place. Why push a 67-year-old woman out of the house she built? My phone buzzed again. A text from Dan. "Mom, thank you for being so understanding about Maple Ridge. Caroline and I really appreciate it. Maybe we can tour the facility this weekend." I stared at the message for a long moment. My sweet boy, when had he become this person who couldn't stand up to his wife, who couldn't protect his own mother? I typed back. "Let me think about it a bit more. Big decision. Love you." His response was immediate. "Love you too, Mom." Did he, though? Or did he just love the idea of making Caroline happy? I closed the laptop and walked to the window. The afternoon sun was starting to slant across the lake, turning the water gold. In the garden, Rob's lavender was just beginning to bud. In another week or two, the purple flowers would bloom, filling the air with that scent that always reminded me of him. I thought about what Rob would say if he were here. "Maggie, my love." I could hear his voice, clear as day. Winning doesn't come from shouting. It comes from the kind of silence that scares people. You be quiet. You be smart. And when they think you're weak, that's when you show them exactly who Margaret Sullivan is. I smiled at my reflection in the window. Caroline wanted me out fine. Let her think I was considering it. Let her think she'd won. Meanwhile, I'd do what I did best: observe, document, and plan. Because I wasn't some helpless old woman who could be shuffled off to a studio apartment while strangers took over the house I built. I was Margaret Sullivan, ER nurse for 35 years, survivor of countless emergencies, difficult patients, and impossible situations. And I'd handled far worse than Caroline Mitchell. The next morning, I was on my front porch watering the flower boxes when Eleanor Hayes walked over from next door. Eleanor had lived there for almost as long as Rob and I had been here, 38 years. We'd raised our kids together, swapped recipes, sat on each other's porches through countless summer evenings. She was carrying her garden basket, but I could tell from her face that gardening wasn't what brought her over. "Morning, Maggie," she said, setting the basket down. "Those tulips are coming in beautiful." "Morning, Eleanor. Want some coffee if you're making." I wasn't, but I would. That was the dance we'd perfected over decades of friendship. When Eleanor said she wanted coffee, she really meant she wanted to talk. Inside, Caroline was still asleep upstairs. She rarely came down before 11 these days. "The baby needs rest," she always said, though I'd worked with plenty of pregnant nurses who pulled 12-hour shifts right up until their due dates. Eleanor settled into a chair at the kitchen table, one of my original oak chairs that Caroline hadn't managed to replace yet, and waited until I'd poured us both cups before she spoke. "I don't mean to pry, Maggie. which meant she was about to pry and we both knew I wouldn't mind. But I've been noticing some things. About Caroline. I sat down across from her, both hands wrapped around my coffee mug. What kind of things? Eleanor hesitated. Her fingers traced the rim of her cup. Yesterday afternoon I was driving back from the grocery store. You know that Crescent Inn, the one across from the gas station on Route 9? I nodded. I saw Caroline there. With a man. My hands tightened on the mug, but I kept my face neutral. Dan was probably meeting her for lunch. He's been working from that coffee shop near there sometimes. No. Eleanor's voice was firm. It wasn't Dan. This man was older. Maybe early 40s. Dark suit, confident build. Drove a black Lexus. And Maggie... She paused. They were holding hands. When they went into the hotel, the kitchen seemed very quiet suddenly. I could hear the clock ticking above the stove, the refrigerator humming, my own heartbeat. Could you have been mistaken? I asked carefully. I called her name. She looked right at me, then turned away like she didn't hear. But she heard Maggie. I'm certain of it. I took a slow sip of coffee, buying time to think. Eleanor wasn't the type to spread gossip. If she was telling me this, she was sure of what she'd seen. What was Caroline wearing, that cream coat she has? The expensive one. And her hair was down. The cream Max Mara coat. I'd seen the receipt once, $1,200. Dan's entire monthly clothing budget used to be about $50. When was this? Around 2 o'clock? I would have told you sooner, but I wasn't sure. I mean, maybe I was jumping to conclusions. But then this morning I saw the same black Lexus parked on your street at 7 a.m. Just sitting there. The man was in it, talking on his phone. When I walked my dog past, he drove away. I set my cup down carefully. Thank you for telling me, Eleanor. I hope I'm wrong, she said, but her eyes said she knew she wasn't. I hope there's a perfectly good explanation. I'm sure there is. After Eleanor left, I went straight to my laptop and added to my incident log. March 29th, 2:00 p.m. Previous day, Caroline seen at Crescent Inn with unknown man. Unknown to me, Eleanor Hayes witnessed man described as 40s, dark suit, black Lexus, holding hands, March 29th, 7:00 a.m. Unknown man parked on our street in black Lexus. Unknown, same vehicle as in sighting. Suspicious behavior. I sat back and stared at the screen. An affair would explain the urgency to get me out of the house. More privacy. More freedom. But it didn't explain everything. My phone alarm chimed. 9:30. Time to get ready for my meeting with Alan. I dressed carefully. Not too formal, but put together. Navy slacks, a white blouse, my good leather jacket. I wanted to look like what I was, a competent woman who knew exactly what she was doing. Before I left, I stopped by the living room. Caroline had come downstairs and was curled up on the couch with her phone scrolling through something. She barely glanced up when I walked in. I'm heading out for a bit, I said. Her eyes stayed on her screen. Doctor's appointment. That got her attention. She looked up and I saw something flicker across her face. Concern or calculation. Everything okay, Mom? Just a checkup. Getting old, you know. Have to stay on top of these things. I made sure to sound tired. A little defeated. Let her think the conversation about Maple Ridge had worn me down. Well, drive safely, she said, but she was already looking back at her phone. As I drove to Alan's office, I thought about that black Lexus, about Caroline's hand resting protectively on her belly, about Dan working late more and more often, never questioning what his wife did while he was gone. And I thought about Rob's words. The quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous. Time to stop being quiet. Time to start being dangerous. Alan Foster's office was in a converted Victorian house downtown, all dark wood and leather furniture. His receptionist, Jean, had been there forever. She'd actually worked for Alan's father before him. Maggie Sullivan. She stood up to hug me. It's been too long. You look wonderful. You're sweet to lie, Jean. Never. Coffee Alan's expecting you. Alan's office overlooked Main Street. He stood when I entered, 68 years old, still trim with white hair and the same kind eyes he'd had since high school. Maggie. He came around the desk to embrace me. It's good to see you, though. I wish the circumstances were better. How do you know the circumstances aren't good? He smiled. Because you have that look. The one you used to get in the ER when a patient came in with a story that didn't match their injuries. What's going on? I sat down and pulled out my phone, opening my evidence folder. I need you to confirm something for me. The house 112 Lakewood Drive. Who owns it? Alan's expression shifted to professional mode. He opened a file on his desk. He'd clearly pulled my records as promised. You do. Sole ownership. When Rob put it in your name 8 years ago, there were no CO owners added. It's entirely yours. And if Dan lives there, or his wife living in a property doesn't grant ownership, you'd need to add them to the deed, which would require your signature witnessed and notarized. What if Dan argues he has rights because he's my son, not without your legal consent? And honestly, Maggie, even if you wanted to add him to the deed, I'd advise against it until after Caroline has the baby and their marriage stabilizes. Why? Alan leaned back in his chair. Because in a divorce, anything Dan owns becomes part of the marital assets. If his name were on that house, Caroline could claim a portion of it in a settlement. The room went very still. You think they're heading for divorce? I asked carefully. I think that in my 40 years of practicing family law, I've seen a lot of young marriages under the stress of a first baby. Some make it, some don't. And I'd hate to see you lose your home because you were trying to help your son. I showed him the photo of the Maple Ridge brochure, told him about the conversation I'd overheard. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing grimmer. They want you out, he said when I finished. The question is why? Is it really just about space for the baby? I don't think so. I told him about Eleanor's sighting, about the black Lexus, about Caroline's phone calls behind closed doors, her insistence on privacy, her pushing Dan to work late more and more often. Alan pulled out a legal pad and started taking notes. Maggie, I'm going to be blunt. This sounds like someone's planning something. Maybe it's innocent. Maybe Caroline's just having a complicated pregnancy and needs space. But maybe not. What would you do if you were in my position? He didn't hesitate. Document everything. And I mean everything. Conversations, comings and goings, any changes to your property. Keep a daily log. Already started. Good. Second, I'd prepare a formal notice. If they're living in your house without paying rent or contributing to expenses, they're essentially guests. You can ask guests to leave. With how much notice in Michigan? 30 days for a month-to-month residential situation. Since you never formalized any rental arrangement, you'd be within your rights to give them notice. I don't want to do that yet. I need to understand what's happening first. Understood. But Maggie. He leaned forward, his voice serious. I want you to be prepared. If they refuse to leave after proper notice, you may need to pursue formal eviction. It could get ugly. It's already ugly, Alan. They just don't know I've noticed yet. He smiled at that. There's the Maggie Sullivan I remember. Rob used to say you were the toughest person he knew. Said you could smile at someone while pulling a knife out of their shoulder. Only if they walked into the ER that way. My point is, you're stronger than they think. Use that. He pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. This is a private investigator, former police detective. If you want to know more about that man with the black Lexus, he's discreet and thorough. I took the card. Marcus Chen, Private Investigations. A phone number and email address. I'll think about it. Do. And Maggie, change the locks. Even if Dan and Caroline have keys, you have every right to change the locks on your own house. Just give them new keys afterward, but it sends a message. We talked for a few more minutes about other protections I could put in place. Updating my will to be crystal clear. Making sure all my financial accounts had beneficiary designations that bypassed probate. Setting up a power of attorney with someone I trusted completely, not Dan, not yet. When I left his office an hour later, I had a folder full of documents and a much clearer picture of my legal standing. The house was mine. Completely, totally, unquestionably mine. Now I just needed to figure out what Caroline was really after. I stopped at Best Buy on the way home. Bought a new doorbell camera, one of those Ring devices that records motion-activated video. The box promised crystal clear footage day and night and instant notifications to your phone. Perfect. I also bought a small voice recorder, the kind court reporters use, tiny enough to slip into a pocket or hide on a bookshelf, and a new lock for my bedroom door, the one Caroline and Dan had taken over. If I was going to lose the master bedroom, at least I could secure my belongings. But first, the office. Rob's office was the one room Caroline hadn't touched, though I'd noticed her eyeing it recently. We could turn this into a playroom she'd suggested last week, when the baby's older. Over my dead body, I installed the lock on the office door first, a deadbolt that needed a key even from the inside. Then I changed the combination on the safe, setting it to a date only I would know, the day Rob and I closed on this land 40 years ago. April 15th, 1985. The doorbell camera took longer to install, but the instructions were clear. I mounted it beside the front door, angled to capture anyone coming or going, downloaded the app to my phone, set up notifications. Then I placed the small voice recorder on the bookshelf in the living room, tucked behind a row of books where it would be invisible, but the microphone would catch conversations clearly. I felt a twinge of guilt. This was my son's house too, in a way. But no, it wasn't. It was my house. They were guests, and guests who were plotting something didn't deserve privacy. I was testing the doorbell camera with my phone when Caroline's voice came from behind me. "What's that?" I turned. She was standing in the doorway, hand on her belly as always, looking at the camera with suspicious eyes. "Security," I said lightly. "Eleanor mentioned there have been some break-ins in the neighborhood. I thought we should be safe, especially with the baby coming." A lie, but a plausible one. And technically there had been one break in 3 streets over 6 months ago. Caroline's expression softened. "That's actually really thoughtful, Mom. Thank you. Of course. I want you and the baby to feel safe here." The irony wasn't lost on me. I was installing cameras to spy on the woman I was supposedly trying to protect. She disappeared back upstairs and I finished the setup. Opened the app, watched the live feed. I could see the entire driveway, the front porch, and part of the street. Perfect. If that black Lexus came back, I'd have footage. That evening, Dan came home at 8, later than usual. He kissed Caroline, asked about her day, then slumped on the couch with a beer. He looked exhausted. "Long day," I asked from the kitchen where I was cleaning up dinner dishes. Chicken and rice simple, since Caroline had declared last week that strong smells trigger my nausea. "Project deadline got moved up," Dan said. "I might have to pull some late nights this week." Caroline's hand found his shoulder. "Whatever you need to do, honey. We understand." She glanced at me. "Right, Mom? Of course," I said. "Work comes first, but I was thinking convenient. Very convenient. Dan works late. Caroline has the house to herself and the baby, and whoever was driving that black Lexus." After they went upstairs, I pulled out my laptop and updated my log. March 29th, 10:00 a.m. Maggie met with lawyer Alan Foster, confirmed sole ownership, discussed legal options. Evidence secured. March 29th, afternoon. Maggie installed doorbell camera and voice recorder, began systematic documentation. Surveillance in place, March 29th, 8:00 p.m. Dan announced late work nights this week. Project deadline moved up. Creates opportunity for Caroline's privacy. Then I did something I'd been avoiding. I opened a new folder on my laptop and labeled it Crescent. Inside, I created a document, Unknown Man Black Lexus Investigation Notes. I wrote down everything Eleanor had told me. Time, location, physical description, vehicle details. Then I pulled out the private investigator's card Alan had given me and sent an email. "Mr. Chen Alan Foster gave me your contact information. I need surveillance on a specific vehicle, black Lexus, possibly connected to the Crescent Inn on Route 9. I can provide more details if you're available. This is a sensitive family matter. Discretion is essential. Margaret Sullivan." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I pulled out the voice recorder from the bookshelf and played back the evening. Static shuffling sounds, then voices. Caroline and Dan in the living room while I was in the kitchen. "Caroline, did you talk to her about moving Dan?" I showed her the brochures. She said she'd think about it. Caroline, "Think about it, Dan. We need this house. We can't keep waiting." "Dan, I know, but she's my mother. I can't just kick her out." Caroline's voice dropped lower, harder to hear, but I caught, "Won't have a choice. After the baby comes." The recording cut off as they moved upstairs. I played it back 3 times. "We need this house. Not we need space. Not the baby needs a nursery. We need this house." Why I sat in the dark office for a long time, Rob's anniversary photo illuminated by the desk lamp. The lavender was blooming in the garden. I could smell it through the window. Rob had planted it the year Dan was born. For good luck, he'd said. Lavender means devotion. I'm devoted to figuring this out, I whispered to his photo. I promise. My phone buzzed. An email from Marcus Chen. "Mrs. Sullivan Allen speaks highly of you. I have availability this week. Can you call me tomorrow at 9 a.m. to discuss details? My fee is $150 hour plus expenses with a 10-hour minimum. Confidentiality guaranteed. Marcus Chen, $1,500 minimum. A lot of money. But what was my house worth? What was the truth worth? I wrote back. I'll call at 9 a.m. Then I locked the office door behind me, climbed the stairs to the small guest room I'd moved into when Caroline took over the master, and lay in the narrow bed staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow I'd start fighting back. Quietly, carefully, but fighting nonetheless. Because Margaret Sullivan didn't raise a son just to have some scheming woman steal his mother's house. And if Caroline thought pregnancy made her untouchable, she'd clearly never worked in an ER. I'd dealt with plenty of pregnant women who thought the rules didn't apply to them. They were always surprised when they learned otherwise. At exactly 9 a.m. the next morning, I sat in Rob's office with the door locked and called Marcus Chen. He answered on the second ring. Chen Investigations. Mr. Chen, this is Margaret Sullivan. We emailed last night. Mrs. Sullivan. Yes. Alan said you might call. What can I help you with? His voice was professional, no nonsense. I liked that. I didn't need sympathy or small talk. I needed information. My daughter-in-law may be having an affair. I need to know who the man is, what his connection to her might be, and whether this affects the situation with my house. Your house. She and my son are trying to get me to move into a senior living facility. I own the house outright. It's in my name only. But they're pushing hard for me to leave, and I need to know why. A pause. I heard typing in the background. The affair, what evidence do you have so far? I told him about Eleanor's sighting. The black Lexus. The Crescent Inn. The man parked outside my house at 7 a.m. Can you get me a photo of your daughter-in-law? Yes. I have several. Good. Send those to my email. Also, any information you have, full name, date of birth, where she works, any social media profiles. The more I have, the faster I can work. What exactly will you do? Surveillance, mostly. I'll watch the Crescent Inn, follow the Lexus. If I spot it, document any meetings between your daughter-in-law and this unknown man. If they're having an affair, I'll get proof. Photos, video, timeline of events, and the legal side. How this connects to my house. That's trickier. I can investigate this man's background, see if he has any financial motivation or connection to real estate. But for the legal implications, you'll need to work with your lawyer. Alan Foster. Good choice. He and I have worked together on several cases. We make a solid team. We discussed his fee structure timeline and how he'd deliver updates. Twice a week via encrypted email, more often if something urgent came up. Photos and video would be stored on a secure server. One more thing, Mrs. Sullivan. I need to be clear about something. What's that? If we find proof of an affair, and if your son doesn't know about it, learning this information will hurt him. Are you prepared for that? I closed my eyes, thought about Dan as a little boy crying when his goldfish died. Dan as a teenager heartbroken over his first girlfriend. Dan as a young man so proud when he proposed to Caroline. Yes, I said. I'm prepared, because whatever short-term pain the truth brings, it's better than the long-term damage of living a lie. Fair enough. Send me those photos and information today. I'll start surveillance tomorrow morning. After we hung up, I sat at Rob's desk for a long time. There was no going back from this. Once I hired an investigator, once I started actively pursuing evidence of Caroline's affair, I was choosing a path that would blow my family apart. But hadn't Caroline chosen that path first? Hadn't she decided to push me out of my own house, to lie to my son, to bring another man into the equation? I wasn't destroying this family. I was trying to save what was left of it. I pulled up Caroline's Facebook profile on my laptop. She kept it surprisingly public, probably because she liked showing off. Photos of her and Dan at trendy restaurants. Her baby bump in designer maternity clothes. Posed shots of the house my house decorated with her expensive taste. I downloaded a dozen clear photos of her face. Then I compiled everything I knew. Caroline Elizabeth Mitchell, born July 15, 1996 in Grand Rapids. Bachelor's degree in marketing from Michigan State. Worked as a brand consultant for some startup downtown, though I'd never been entirely clear on what that meant. I sent everything to Marcus Chen with a subject line, complete information as requested. His reply came back in minutes. Received. Beginning work tomorrow. Will update you Friday. 2 days. In 2 days, I might know who the man in the black Lexus was. That afternoon, I was in the garden planting new lavender when Caroline came outside. She moved slowly, one hand supporting her lower back, the other on her belly. 7 months pregnant, and she wore it like a shield. Mom, can we talk? I sat back on my heels, brushing dirt from my gardening gloves. Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind? She settled into one of the porch chairs with a small groan. I wanted to apologize if I came across too pushy about Maple Ridge. I know it's a big decision, It is. It's just, she touched her belly. The doctor says stress during the 3rd trimester can affect the baby's development. Elevated cortisol levels in the mother can impact the baby's nervous system. There are studies. Of course there were studies. Caroline always had studies. Studies about why I couldn't cook garlic anymore. Studies about why quiet mornings were essential. Studies justifying every request she made. I understand, I said mildly. You want what's best for the baby. Exactly. Relief flooded her face. And honestly, Mom, I think you'd love Maple Ridge. No more worrying about maintaining this big house. No more yard work or repairs. You could just relax. I pulled another lavender plant from its pot. Though I do enjoy the yard work. Keeps me active. Well, sure, but at your age, she caught herself. I mean, you've earned the right to rest. You've worked so hard your whole life. At my age, 67. Ancient, apparently. Never mind that I could still work a full day in the garden without breaking a sweat. Never mind that I'd spent 35 years on my feet in the ER dealing with traumas that would make Caroline faint. I appreciate your concern, I said. There's something else. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to that confidential tone she used when she wanted something. Dan's been so stressed lately. This new project at work is really getting to him. I worry about his health. He does seem tired. If you moved to Maple Ridge, he wouldn't have to worry about you, about whether you're okay here alone, whether you need help with anything. It would be one less thing on his mind. Ah, there it was. Reframe my staying as a burden on Dan. Make me feel guilty for causing my son stress. I hadn't thought of it that way, I lied. Plus, with the baby coming, Dan and I will need to focus all our energy on being parents. We won't have as much time to check on you, make sure you have everything you need. I'm pretty self-sufficient. I know you are. But things change. What if you fell and couldn't get up? What if you had a medical emergency? At Maple Ridge, there's staff available, 24/7. I pressed the lavender plant into the soil, patting the earth down firmly. Caroline, I worked in an ER for 35 years. I know how to handle medical emergencies. Of course. She shifted uncomfortably. I'm thinking about the future, about what's best for everyone, for the baby especially. Everything came back to the baby, the mystical baby who needed absolute silence, perfect air quality, and apparently a house free of elderly grandmothers. Tell me something, I said, still focused on the planting. Why this house specifically? Dan makes good money. You have your consulting business. You could afford a nice place of your own. For just a second, her mask slipped. I saw something hard flash in her eyes. Then the sweet smile returned. This house has so much space, and it's on the lake. Where else could we find something like this in our price range? So it's about the house. It's about giving our baby the best start possible. Imagine growing up here by the lake with the garden with all this room to play. In the house I built with my husband. The words came out sharper than I intended. Caroline's smile tightened. I know this is your house, Mom. That's why we thought Maple Ridge would be perfect. You'd still own it. You could rent it to us even. Generate some income for yourself. There it was. The real plan. I'd move out, they'd stay, and eventually the house would be theirs. When I died, it would pass to Dan, and since he was married to Caroline, she'd have her claim. Interesting idea, I said. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. She stood up, groaning again. I should rest. The baby's been kicking like crazy today. I watched her waddle back inside, one hand on her belly, playing the exhausted pregnant woman perfectly. And maybe she was exhausted. Growing a human being takes energy, but so does running a con. I pulled out my phone and added to my log. April 0 p.m. Caroline pressured about Maple Ridge suggested renting house to them. For the baby plus creating guilt about Dan's stress. Confirms real goal is acquiring the house, not just space. That evening I heard Caroline on the phone in the living room. I was in the kitchen, but the voice recorder hidden in the bookshelf would catch every word. I'd check it later. Her voice carried that flirtatious tone she never used with Dan. Light, breathy, intimate. I know. No, he doesn't suspect anything. She's thinking about it, but she's stubborn. I need more time. Trust me, it'll work out. I stirred the pasta sauce slowly, quietly. Didn't let the spoon clink against the pot. Can't wait to see you. Tomorrow night he's working late again. Perfect. Tomorrow night. The man in the black Lexus would be here tomorrow night. And thanks to my new doorbell camera, I'd have video evidence. Friday morning, Marcus Chen emailed me. Mrs. Sullivan, I have preliminary information on the vehicle. Black Lexus ES registered to Blackwood Capital Partners, a real estate investment firm in Grand Rapids. Primary driver Marcus Blackwood, age 42, principal investor. Attached are photos of Mr. Blackwood and a summary of his business. Notable Blackwood Capital specializes in residential property acquisition. They buy undervalued homes often from elderly owners or distressed sellers. I'll continue surveillance at Crescent Inn today and your residence tonight as discussed. Chennai opened the attachments with shaking hands. The first photo showed a man in a dark suit stepping out of the black Lexus. Tall, maybe 6'2", with broad shoulders and salt and pepper hair. Confident posture. Expensive watch. I zoomed in. Omega Seamaster. The second attachment was a business profile. Marcus Blackwood, MBA from University of Michigan, 20 years in real estate investment. His company's website showed testimonials from satisfied sellers who'd found peace of mind by selling their homes to Blackwood Capital. The before and after photos told a different story. Modest family homes bought for below market prices, then flipped and sold for 3 or 4 times what Blackwood had paid. The satisfied sellers looked elderly, tired, relieved to be free of the burden of homeownership. My stomach turned. I opened my property records from the safe. The last appraisal I'd had done was 5 years ago when I updated my insurance. The house had been valued at $450,000. On the lake with established gardens, original hardwood floors, and a solidly built structure, Rob's craftsmanship, it was probably worth $600,000 now. Maybe more. If Caroline and Marcus could somehow get me out, convince me to sell cheap, or rent to them, they could flip it for an enormous profit. Or simply take ownership and never pay me a dime. I forwarded Marcus Chen's email to Alan Foster with a subject line, "Found him." Alan called me within 10 minutes. "Maggie, this is worse than I thought. Tell me." I looked up Blackwood Capital. They have a pattern. They target elderly homeowners, usually through family members. A son or daughter introduces them as a financial advisor or real estate consultant. They pressure the elderly person to sell, often undervaluing the property. By the time anyone realizes what's happened, the house is gone and Blackwood's made a fortune. Has he been prosecuted twice? Both cases settled out of court with NDAs. He's careful to stay just this side of legal. So what do I do? Document everything. Keep Chen on surveillance. And Maggie, don't sign anything. Not one piece of paper related to this house. Even if Caroline or Dan pressure you, even if they say it's just preliminary paperwork, don't sign. I won't. Good. I'm drafting a 30-day notice to vacate just in case you need it. You have every legal right to ask them to leave your property. After we hung up, I sat in Rob's office staring at Marcus Blackwood's photo. So this was the plan. Caroline seduces Dan, gets pregnant, moves into the house, and slowly pushes me toward leaving. Meanwhile, her partner Marcus lines up the real estate deal. Once I'm gone, they take over, and my house, the house Rob and I built with our own hands, becomes just another investment property. Over my dead body. That night, Dan texted that he'd be working until 11. I made dinner for myself and Caroline baked chicken, nothing with strong smells, and ate quickly. Caroline picked at her food, distracted, checking her phone constantly. At 8:30, she announced she was going to take a bath and go to bed early. "Big day tomorrow," she said vaguely. "Sleep well, sweetheart." I cleaned the kitchen, then settled in Rob's office with my laptop. Pulled up the doorbell camera app. The live feed showed my empty porch, the driveway, the street beyond. At 9:47, headlights appeared. The black Lexus pulled smoothly into my driveway. Marcus Blackwood stepped out. Even on the grainy camera footage, his confidence was obvious. Expensive suit, perfectly styled hair, that watch catching the porch light. He carried a shopping bag from some upscale store. He walked up to my front door and rang the bell. I watched on my phone as Caroline appeared almost instantly. She'd changed from her maternity sweats into a silk robe one I'd never seen before. Her hair was down, makeup fresh. She opened the door and he stepped inside without hesitation. Their body language was intimate, familiar. His hand went to her face, brushing her cheek. She leaned into the touch. The camera couldn't capture audio, but I didn't need it. I could see everything I needed to see. They disappeared inside. I switched to the voice recorder app. I could access it remotely now, a feature I'd paid extra for, and hit record. Their voices came through clearly. "Marcus, you look beautiful." "Caroline, I missed you. It's been 3 days. Marcus, I know, but we need to be careful. Has she said anything more about Maple Ridge, Caroline? She's thinking about it. I'm pushing the rent angle. Make her think she'll have income from the property." "Marcus, good. Once she's out and you have possession, we can move forward with the transfer. Caroline, what if she doesn't agree, Marcus? Then we go to plan B. You and Dan separate. You get a lawyer to claim the house as marital property since you've been living here. Even if she fights it, the legal fees will drain her. Eventually she'll settle. Caroline. That seems cruel. Marcus, it's business, sweetheart. Don't go soft on me now. A pause. Sounds I didn't want to interpret. Caroline. What about the baby, Marcus? What about it, Caroline? Dan thinks it's his. Marcus, and it might be. Does it matter? I don't know. Sometimes I feel guilty. Guilt is expensive. We're about to make $600,000 on this house. Maybe more if we hold it a few years. That's worth a little guilt. I stopped the recording. I'd heard enough. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from pure rage. They were talking about my house, my home, my 40 years of memories like it was just another transaction. And the baby. Dan's baby. Maybe. Oh, Dan. My sweet, trusting boy. I downloaded the doorbell camera footage, downloaded the audio recording, backed everything up to 3 different locations, cloud storage, external drive, and emailed to myself with the subject line, "Evidence do not delete." Then I sat in the dark and waited. At 11:15, I heard the front door open and close. The Lexus engine started. I checked the camera feed. Marcus was leaving Caroline standing in the doorway in her silk robe, watching him go. 5 minutes later, Dan's car pulled in. I watched through the camera as he got out tired and rumpled from his long day at work. Caroline opened the door, now dressed in her maternity sweats, again looking sleepy and innocent. She stood on her tiptoes to kiss him. His arms went around her, protective, loving. And I thought, he has no idea. I added to my log with tears in my eyes. April 3, 9:47 p.m. Marcus Blackwood arrived, stayed until 11:15 p.m. Real estate scheme confirmed, discussed plan B of legal manipulation, paternity questioned. Saturday morning, I told Caroline I was driving to the Lakeside Flower Market for some new plants. She barely looked up from her phone. Have fun, Mom. I took my time at the market buying pink tulips and fresh herbs. Chatted with the owner about the unusually warm spring. Stopped at the bank to transfer some money between accounts. Nothing urgent, just establishing a routine of Saturday errands. I got home around 1 p.m. The driveway was packed with cars. The front gate stood wide open. Music and laughter spilled from every window. My house looked like a party venue. I parked on the street, no room in my own driveway, and walked up to the porch carrying my flowers. Through the windows, I could see at least 20 people. Decorations everywhere, blush pink and pale blue, the stereotypical baby colors. Balloon streamers, a banner reading "Baby Sprinkle for Caroline." Not Dan and Caroline, just Caroline. I pushed open the front door. The music was loud, some pop song I didn't recognize. Groups of young women in trendy outfits clustered around the living room, holding champagne glasses and laughing. Not one person noticed me enter. I stood in the doorway of my own living room and looked around. Every family photo was gone. Every single one. The wedding picture of me and Rob that had hung beside the fireplace for 40 years vanished. Dan's graduation photo. Rob's memorial portrait. All erased. In their place, ultrasound images in expensive frames. Greeting cards with messages like "New Beginnings" and "Fresh Start." A professional photo of Caroline in a flowing white dress, hand on her belly, looking ethereal. And on the mantel, where Rob's ashes had sat in a simple wooden urn for 8 years, a large sign, "Welcome Little Blackwood Sullivan." Not Sullivan. Not even Sullivan Mitchell. Blackwood Sullivan. She'd put Marcus's name on my grandchild before Dan's family name. Mom Caroline appeared from the kitchen, balancing a tray of cupcakes. She wore a white lace dress with a pink sash across her chest, reading "Mommy-to-be." Her hair was professionally styled, her makeup perfect. She looked like she owned the place. "I didn't think you'd be home this early." She set the tray down. "We wanted to surprise you." "Well, you succeeded. Isn't it wonderful? My friends threw me the most amazing baby sprinkle." She gestured around. "And I invited a few of Dan's co-workers, too. Oh, there's someone I want you to meet." She pulled me toward a tall man in a dark suit. Even before she said his name, I knew. "Mom, this is Marcus. He works with Dan. Marcus, this is Dan's mother, Margaret." Marcus Blackwood extended his hand, a professional smile on his face. Up close, I could see the lines around his eyes, the expensive cologne, the Omega watch. He radiated success and confidence. "Mrs. Sullivan, so wonderful to finally meet you. Dan talks about you all the time. I shook his hand. His grip was firm, practiced. The grip of a man who'd closed many deals. Does he... I kept my voice pleasant. That's nice. What exactly do you do at Dan's company? Marcus, I'm actually a consultant. Financial planning, investment strategies. Dan and I met through a mutual friend. Lies. All lies. Dan's company was a software firm. They didn't need financial consultants. How interesting. And you're here for the baby sprinkle, couldn't miss it. Dan's been like a brother to me these past few months. Caroline's hand found Marcus's arm. Just for a second. Just long enough for me to see. Marcus has been so helpful with our financial planning, Caroline said. He's the one who suggested Maple Ridge for you, actually. He says it's a wonderful facility. I'm sure it is. I smiled at them both. Excuse me, I should put these flowers in water. I walked to the kitchen, my heart pounding. Behind me, I heard Caroline laugh at something Marcus said. That light, flirtatious laugh I'd heard on the recording. In the kitchen, 2 of Caroline's friends were arranging cookies on platters. They glanced at me curious. Oh, are you Dan's mom? One asked. I am. Caroline's told us so much about you. It's so sweet that you're helping them out by moving to that retirement place. My grandmother's in one and she loves it. I smiled tightly. Caroline's very thoughtful. Through the doorway I could see Marcus. He'd moved to the window holding his phone, making a call. I watched his mouth move, his face serious. And I thought, you have no idea what I know. I pulled out my phone and pretended to check messages. Actually opened the camera app. Took casual photos, the decorations, the guests, the food. And several clear shots of Marcus and Caroline together. Their body language. The way they gravitated toward each other across the room. One photo captured Marcus's hand resting lightly on Caroline's lower back. Another showed them talking in the corner, heads close together, her hand on his arm. Evidence. All evidence. I noticed Caroline's friends watching, so I smiled brightly. Just documenting the party for Dan. He'll be sorry he missed it. Where is Dan? One of the friends asked Caroline. Working. Big project. She rolled her eyes. But he'll see all the photos. Will he, I thought. Will he see all of them? The party went on for another 2 hours. Cake was served expensive from that boutique bakery downtown. 3 tiers decorated with tiny fondant baby shoes and rattles. Gifts were opened, designer baby clothes, high-end strollers, every item more expensive than the last. I sat in the corner and observed. Watched as Caroline held court like a queen. Watched as Marcus stayed close, always within her orbit. Watched as she occasionally touched her belly and talked about how the baby needed everything to be perfect. At one point, one of Caroline's friends came over to me. You must be so excited to be a grandmother. I am. Caroline says you're moving soon, to give them space. We're discussing it. That's so selfless. I wish my mother-in-law were like you. She's so clingy. Doesn't understand that young families need their own space. I smiled and said nothing. What was there to say that I was being pushed out of my own house? That my daughter-in-law was having an affair? That my grandchild might not even be my grandchild? After the guests started leaving, I helped clean up. Caroline tried to stop me. Oh, Mom, you don't have to do that, but I insisted. It's my house, I said pleasantly. I don't mind. Her smile faltered for just a second. As I collected paper plates and wadded up wrapping paper, I found something on the floor beneath the couch. A white envelope, the kind you put a check in. I opened it. Inside, a business card. Marcus Blackwood, Principal Investor, Blackwood Capital Partners, specializing in residential property acquisition. On the back, handwritten, call me when you're ready. I'll make this worth your while. M. I slipped the card into my pocket. That evening, Dan came home to a house full of baby gifts and a tired, glowing wife. He kissed her, admired the hall, listened as she described every detail of the party. Your mom was so sweet, Caroline said. She helped clean up everything. Thanks, Mom. Dan hugged me. Sorry I missed it. Work is work, I said. I understand. But I looked at him, really looked at him, saw the circles under his eyes, the slump in his shoulders, the way he moved through the house like a ghost present, but not really there. My son was exhausted, stressed, working himself to death while his wife threw parties with her lover and plotted to steal his mother's house. And he had no idea. I'm going to bed, I said. Big day. In Rob's office, I downloaded every photo I'd taken at the party, added them to my evidence folder, scanned Marcus's business card front and back. Then I updated my log. April 4th, 1st, 0 p.m. Baby sprinkle party. Not notified in advance. All family photos removed. Blackwood Sullivan name displayed Marcus Blackwood present and intimate with Caroline public display of affairs property scheme. I emailed everything to Marcus Chen and Alan Foster. Subject line, complete evidence package attached. Then I sat in Rob's chair and looked at his photo on the desk. Almost time, I whispered. Almost time to show them who Margaret Sullivan really is. Monday morning, I asked Dan and Caroline to join me for a family dinner Wednesday night. I want to discuss Maple Ridge, I said. Make some decisions. And I'd like Caroline's friends Melissa and Kate to join us. They seem so knowledgeable about these things. Caroline's face lit up. Really? Oh, Mom, that's wonderful. We can absolutely do that. She thought I was surrendering. Giving up. Moving toward accepting their plan. Perfect. I spent Tuesday preparing. Printed every piece of evidence, photos, audio transcripts, property records, Marcus Blackwood's business profile, the doorbell camera footage stills. Organized everything into a presentation folder with tabs and page numbers. Alan Foster helped me create a slideshow on my laptop. Keep it simple, he advised. Let the evidence speak for itself. I also prepared dinner. Roast chicken potatoes, green beans, Dan's favorite meal from childhood. Might as well feed him before his world fell apart. Wednesday evening, Melissa and Kate arrived first. Young women in their late 20s, stylishly dressed, curious about why they'd been invited to a family dinner. Mrs. Sullivan, thank you so much for including us, Melissa said. Of course. You've been such good friends to Caroline. I wanted you here for this important discussion. Dan came home at 6, Caroline at 6:15. We all settled around the dining room table, the same table Rob and I had bought 42 years ago, solid oak built to last. I served dinner, made small talk about work, about the baby, about the weather. Let everyone relax. After dessert, Dan's favorite apple pie, I cleared my throat. I want to thank you all for being here. I've given a lot of thought to Maple Ridge, to what's best for everyone, and I've made some decisions. Caroline leaned forward eagerly. We're so glad, Mom. But first I need to show you all something, to make sure everyone understands the full situation. I pulled out my laptop and connected it to the TV that Caroline had mounted on the wall last month. The screen flickered to life. What's this? Dan asked, confused. Context, I said simply. The first slide appeared. The house deed. This is the ownership document for 112 Lakewood Drive. As you can see, the sole owner is Margaret Elizabeth Sullivan. No co-owners, no joint ownership. Just me. Dan shifted uncomfortably. Mom, we know it's your house. Let me finish, sweetheart. The next slide showed the property tax records, all paid, the insurance, all current. The will leaving everything to Dan, but clearly stating upon my death. I own this house completely. I have for 40 years. I will continue to own it until I decide otherwise. Caroline's smile had frozen on her face. Click. The next slide. Photos from the baby sprinkle, the Blackwood Sullivan sign, the ultrasound frames, the erased family photos. Saturday you held a party in my house, without asking me, and you removed every photo of my family, including my late husband, and replaced them with your decorations. I was going to put them back, Caroline stammered. It was just for the party. The doorbell camera footage. Marcus Blackwood on my porch. Caroline answering the door in her silk robe. His hand on her face. Their intimate body language. The room went absolutely silent. What is this? Dan's voice was barely a whisper. This is footage from Friday night, April 3rd, when you were working late. Click. More photos. Marcus and Caroline at the baby sprinkle. His hand on her back. Their heads together too close for co-workers. And this is Saturday, at the party. Dan's face had drained of all color. Melissa and Kate stared at their plates. I don't understand, Dan said, but his voice cracked. Caroline, she opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. It's not, he's just a friend, is he? I pressed play on an audio file. Their voices filled the room. Crystal clear. Marcus. Once she's out and you have possession, we can move forward with the transfer. Caroline. What if she doesn't agree, Marcus? Then we go to plan B. You and Dan separate. You get a lawyer to claim the house as marital property. I let it play for 30 seconds, then stopped. Dan stood up so fast his chair fell backwards. What the hell is this, Caroline? I can explain. Explain what? That you're sleeping with someone named Marcus. That you're trying to steal my mother's house. It's not like that. Caroline's voice rose panicked now. He's helping us with financial planning. Click, Marcus Blackwood's business profile appeared on the screen. Marcus Blackwood, real estate investor who specializes in acquiring properties from elderly homeowners, often through family members who pressure their relatives to sell at below market value. I turned to look directly at Caroline. You brought a con artist into my house, into my family. You got pregnant whether by my son or by Marcus, I don't even know, so you'd have an excuse to move in. Then you systematically tried to push me out so you and Marcus could take ownership of my house and flip it for profit. That's not true. But Caroline's face betrayed her. Tears streaming down, but her eyes were calculating, looking for an escape route. And the baby. Dan's voice broke. Is it mine? Caroline's silence answered everything. Oh my God. Dan sank back into his chair, head in his hands. Oh my God. Melissa stood abruptly. Kate, we should go. Yes. We're sorry, Mrs. Sullivan. They practically ran for the door. Caroline tried to follow them, but Dan grabbed her wrist. Don't you dare walk away right now. Let go of me, the baby. Mine, I don't know. The words burst out of her. I don't know, okay. It could be yours. It could be Marcus's. I don't know. The sound Dan made wasn't quite a sob, more like something breaking inside him. I stood up slowly. I want you out of my house, Caroline. Both of you. Dan's head snapped up. Mom, I didn't know. I know you didn't, sweetheart. But you let her push me aside. You let her erase your father's memory from this house. You chose her over me at every turn. I kept my voice steady, despite the tears on my own cheeks. I need some time, and I need my house back. Where am I supposed to go? Caroline demanded. Call Marcus. I'm sure he'll take you in. You can't just throw me out, I'm pregnant. And that pregnancy is not a license to steal my house. I pulled out a formal document that Alan had prepared. This is a 30-day notice to vacate. You have 1 month to find other arrangements. I set it on the table in front of her. If you refuse to leave, I will pursue formal eviction. My lawyer assures me I will win. Caroline snatched up the notice, her hands shaking. You're cruel. You're a cruel old woman. People will hate you for this. Let them, I said quietly. I have the truth on my side. She grabbed her phone and purse and stormed out. Seconds later, I heard her car start, tires squealing as she sped away. Dan and I sat in the silence she left behind. I'm so sorry, Mom. His voice was broken. I didn't see it. I didn't see any of it. I moved to his side, put my hand on his shoulder. She's very good at manipulation, Dan. This isn't your fault. But I should have protected you. Should have questioned. He broke off sobbing. I held my son while he cried. This tall, grown man who'd been my sweet baby once, who'd trusted the wrong person and nearly lost everything. What do I do now? He asked finally. Now I handed him a tissue. Now you decide who you are, whether you're the man who lets himself be manipulated or the man who stands up for what's right, even when it's hard. He nodded slowly. Can I stay here tonight? I can't. Of course. This is your home, Dan. It always has been. He went upstairs to the guest room, not the master bedroom, I noticed. That would need to be reclaimed, cleaned, blessed somehow to remove Caroline's presence. I sat alone in the dining room looking at the cooling food, the laptop still showing Marcus Blackwood's face on the TV screen. I'd done it. Exposed the truth. Protected my house. But I felt no triumph. Only a deep, bone-tired sadness. Tomorrow, Caroline would probably post on social media about the heartless mother-in-law who kicked out a pregnant woman. Tomorrow there would be phone calls and drama and legal maneuvering. But tonight I was just exhausted. I closed the laptop, turned off the lights, and stood at the window looking out at the lake. The water was dark, reflecting the stars. We protected it, Rob, I whispered. Our house. Our home. I protected it. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I woke to sunlight streaming through the guest room window. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then it all came rushing back, the dinner, the evidence, Caroline's face when she realized she'd been caught. Dan's car was still in the driveway. I could hear him moving around in the other guest room, the sound of the shower running. Normal morning sounds in a house that felt anything but normal. I made coffee. Strong the way Rob used to make it. The kitchen looked different in the morning light, cleaner somehow, like a weight had been lifted. Dan appeared in the doorway at 7:30. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face drawn. He'd aged 10 years overnight. Morning, Mom. Morning, sweetheart. Coffee, please. We sat at the kitchen table in silence for a while. Sometimes silence is what's needed. Sometimes there are no words adequate for the betrayal you've survived. Finally, Dan spoke. I called in sick to work. I can't focus on code right now. That's understandable. Caroline's been texting. She wants to talk. Do you want to talk to her? He stared into his coffee cup. I don't know. Part of me wants answers. The other part just wants to pretend the last year never happened. I reached across the table and took his hand. Dan, you need to know something. Whatever you decide about Caroline, whether you divorce her, whether you try to work it out, whether that baby is yours or not, this house is still your home. I'm still your mother. That hasn't changed. His eyes filled with tears. I almost let her take it from you. Your home. Everything you and Dad built. But you didn't. And now you know better. I should have seen it. Should have questioned why she was so eager to push you out. She's a professional manipulator, Dan. Marcus Blackwood probably trained her. This is what they do, find vulnerable targets and exploit them. He winced at vulnerable targets. But it was true. Dan had always been soft-hearted, eager to please, hating conflict. Caroline had seen that and used it. What do I do now? He asked. First, you talk to a lawyer. Not Alan, he's my lawyer. You need your own representation. Figure out your legal standing with Caroline with the baby if it's yours with your assets. Everything's joint. Bank accounts, credit cards. We bought that new car together last month. Then you need to protect yourself. Fast. He nodded slowly. Will you help me find someone? Of course. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Chen. Mrs. Sullivan urgent. Can you call me? Excuse me a minute, sweetheart. I stepped into Rob's office and called Chen back. Mrs. Sullivan, I thought you should know Marcus Blackwood was arrested this morning. My heart skipped. Arrested FBI. Turns out he's been under investigation for months. Real estate fraud, wire fraud, elder exploitation. Your case, the evidence you gathered that was just one piece. The feds had at least 6 other families prepared to testify. So it's over for Blackwood? Yes. He's looking at serious federal charges. But Mrs. Sullivan, I need to warn you. Caroline Mitchell was his accomplice in at least 3 other cases. The FBI may want to talk to you, and they may want to talk to her. I sat down heavily. She could go to prison. Possibly. Depends on what deal she cuts, how cooperative she is. But yes, she's facing charges too. After we hung up, I sat in Rob's chair for a long moment. Caroline stupid greedy. Caroline had gotten herself mixed up in federal crimes. And she was carrying a baby. My grandchild, maybe. What a mess. I went back to the kitchen and told Dan everything. His face went from shock to horror to something like relief. So it wasn't just us. She's done this before. Apparently. The baby, he stopped. If it's mine and if Caroline goes to prison, one step at a time, Dan. First find out if you're the father. Then make decisions based on that. He nodded, but I could see his mind racing. Already he was thinking about custody, about raising a child alone, about all the impossible complications ahead. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Sullivan, this is Special Agent Jennifer Hayes with the FBI. I'm calling about Marcus Blackwood and Caroline Mitchell. Agent Hayes wanted to meet in person. She arrived at my house 2 hours later with a younger agent named Torres. Both in dark suits, both carrying badges and serious expressions. I made coffee. I'd made more coffee in the last 24 hours than I had all month, and we sat in the living room. Dan joined us, quiet and pale. Mrs. Sullivan, I want to thank you for the evidence you gathered, Agent Hayes began. She was in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Your documentation was instrumental in our investigation. I just wanted to protect my home. You did more than that. The audio recordings, the video footage, the financial tracking, it's all admissible evidence. We've been building a case against Blackwood for 14 months, but he's clever. Stays just inside legal boundaries. Your recordings gave us the proof we needed. What exactly has he done? Agent Torres opened a laptop. Marcus Blackwood runs a sophisticated real estate fraud operation. He identifies high-value properties owned by elderly individuals, then uses romantic partners to infiltrate the families. The partners, usually younger women, marry or move in with the adult children, gain the elderly person's trust, then systematically isolate them. The screen showed a slideshow. Photos of other elderly people, other houses, Other families destroyed. Martha Chen, 72, in Ann Arbor. Her son married Blackwood's associate, a woman named Jennifer Ross. Within 6 months, Mrs. Chen was in a nursing home, and her house was sold to Blackwood Capital for half its value. Click. Robert Patterson, 68, in Lansing. His daughter's boyfriend convinced him to take out a reverse mortgage, then helped him transfer the property to a trust controlled by Blackwood. Click. Eleanor and George Morton, both in their 70s, Grand Rapids. Their nephew's fiancée moved in to help with care. 6 months later, the Mortons were in separate facilities, and their lakefront property was being flipped for $1 million profit. I felt sick. How many we've identified? 9 definite cases. Probably more we don't know about. And Caroline Agent Hayes' expression hardened. Caroline Mitchell has been working with Blackwood for 3 years. She's been his partner in at least 4 confirmed schemes. She targets middle-aged men with elderly parents and valuable property. Dan made a strangled sound. So she never loved me. It was always about the house. I'm sorry, Mr. Sullivan, but yes, based on our investigation, that appears to be the case. The room spun slightly. I gripped the arm of the couch. The baby, I heard myself ask. We don't know yet. But Mrs. Sullivan, Mr. Sullivan, we need your help. We need you to testify. Both of you. About what happened here, about Caroline's manipulation, about Blackwood's involvement. Will Caroline go to prison? Dan's voice was hollow. That depends on several factors. If she cooperates, provides testimony against Blackwood, shows genuine remorse, she might get a reduced sentence. If not? Agent Hayes shrugged. She's looking at 5 to 10 years on fraud charges. And if she's pregnant when she's sentenced, the baby would likely be born in a prison hospital, then placed with family or in foster care, pending custody determination. Dan stood abruptly. I need some air. He walked out to the porch. Through the window, I watched him stand at the railing, staring at the lake shoulders shaking. This is destroying him, I said quietly. I know, and I'm sorry. But these people, Blackwood, Caroline, their associates, they've destroyed families across 3 states. We need to stop them. I'll testify. Whatever you need. Thank you. We'll be in touch with a subpoena, but it's mostly a formality. Your recorded evidence is our strongest asset. After the agents left, I went out to Dan. Put my arm around my son's waist. We stood together watching the morning sun sparkle on the water. I fell in love with a lie, he said finally. Everything about her was fake. Not everything. Your feelings were real. Your hope for a family was real. She's the one who lied, not you. How do I trust anyone again? Time, healing, therapy probably. I squeezed him tighter. And knowing that what happened wasn't your fault. You were targeted by professionals. Con artists. You're a victim, Dan, not a fool. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe it yet. That would take time. I think I should move out for a while, he said. Get an apartment. Give you your space back. This is your home, Dan. I know, but I need to figure out who I am without Caroline, without the lie I was living. I understood that. Sometimes you need to step away to find yourself again. Okay, but you come to dinner, once a week minimum. I'm not losing my son because of that woman. He managed a weak smile. Deal. Over the next week, I systematically reclaimed my house. First, the master bedroom. I stripped the bed. Caroline's expensive silk sheets went straight into the trash. Opened all the windows. Let fresh air and sunlight blast away the memory of her presence. I found things hidden in drawers. Expensive jewelry probably bought with Dan's money. Receipts from restaurants I'd never heard of. A burner phone, the kind people use for affairs. All of it went into a box labeled Caroline's Belongings, Police Evidence. I repainted the walls. Not the trendy gray Caroline had chosen, but the warm sand color Rob and I had originally picked. It took 3 coats, but I did it myself. Every brushstroke felt like reclaiming territory. The nursery was harder. All those baby things, the crib Caroline had insisted on, the designer mobile, the rocking chair. I couldn't just throw them away. They represented hope, even if that hope had been built on lies. So I dismantled everything carefully, packed it in boxes, stored it in the basement. Maybe someday there would be a real grandchild. Maybe not. Either way, I'd keep it. I repainted that room too. Soft yellow, the color of morning light. Put in a simple guest bed with white linens. A vase of fresh flowers on the nightstand. Made it ready for whoever might need it. Eleanor came over one afternoon and found me on my hands and knees scrubbing the kitchen floor. Maggie Sullivan, what on earth are you doing? Making this house mine again. She took the scrub brush from my hands. Not alone, you're not. We worked together all afternoon. Eleanor helped me bring my blue ceramic dishes back up from the basement. We washed each piece carefully, then put them back in the cabinets where they belonged. We rehung all the family photos. My wedding picture with Rob went back above the mantel, his memorial portrait in the hallway, Dan's graduation photo on the bookshelf. There, Eleanor said, standing back to survey our work. That's better. That's home. She was right. The house felt like mine again, like Rob was here in spirit watching over everything. That evening, I made dinner in my reclaimed kitchen. Real dinner garlic chicken, the recipe Rob had loved that I hadn't made in months because Caroline complained about the smell. I opened all the windows, let the aroma drift out over the lake, played Rob's favorite jazz music on the old stereo, and I felt for the first time since Caroline moved in like I could breathe fully. 2 weeks after Caroline left, I got a call from Lakewood Women's Center. Miss Sullivan, this is Diana Martinez. I'm the director here. I got your name from Eleanor Hayes. She mentioned you might have a spare room available. I do. What do you need? We have a young woman, 24, who needs emergency housing. She left an abusive situation last night. Our shelter is at capacity and we're trying to place her somewhere safe while we arrange longer-term housing. I looked around my clean, empty house. The guest room with its yellow walls and white linens. Send her over, I heard myself say. First month is free. She can stay as long as she needs to get back on her feet. Are you sure we can run a background check first? Provide references, I'm sure. What's her name? Sophie Chen. I'll bring her by this afternoon if that works. After we hung up, I sat in Rob's office. This wasn't what I'd planned. I'd fought so hard to keep this house to protect my space. And now I was inviting a stranger to live here, but Rob's words echoed in my memory. A house isn't walls, Maggie. It's the people who refuse to let it fall. Maybe I'd saved this house for a reason. Not just to keep it from Caroline's grasping hands, but to offer it to someone who really needed it. Sophie arrived at 3 p.m. Diana walked her to the door, a small woman with kind eyes and tired shoulders. Behind her, Sophie looked like she might bolt at any second. 24 years old, but she looked younger, thin with dark circles under her eyes and hair that needed washing. She clutched a plastic grocery bag, everything she owned apparently. Sophie, this is Mrs. Sullivan. She's offering you a room. Sophie's eyes met mine, dark, cautious, waiting for the catch. Hi, Sophie. Please come in. She hesitated on the threshold, like she was afraid that crossing into my house would trigger some trap. It's okay, I said gently. No one will hurt you here. I promise. Something in my voice must have convinced her. She stepped inside. I showed her around. Kitchen, bathroom, the guest room with its yellow walls. Here's a key, I said, pressing it into her hand. Your room locks from the inside. You can come and go as you please. If you need anything, knock on my door. If you need space, I'll give it to you. Her fingers closed around the key. Why are you doing this? Because someone tried to take my house from me, and I fought to keep it. Now I want to use it to help people who are fighting their own battles. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't have money. I can't pay rent. I'm not asking you to. Just rest, heal, figure out your next steps. That's all I need from you. After Diana left, Sophie stood in the guest room doorway, still holding her plastic bag. There are clean towels in the bathroom, I said. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen. I usually eat dinner around 6, but you don't have to join me if you're not comfortable. She nodded, not quite meeting my eyes. That first night I heard her shower running at midnight. Heard soft crying through the walls. Heard the kettle whistle at 2 a.m. I didn't intrude. Some pain needs privacy. But the next morning I made extra coffee and left a cup outside her door. When I came back an hour later, the cup was gone. Progress. It took 3 days before Sophie spoke more than a few words to me. I was in the garden planting new lavender to replace the stalks that hadn't survived the winter. Sophie came out onto the porch, hesitant. Can I help? I looked up. You like gardening? I don't know. Never tried, but I'd like to learn. I handed her a trowel. Start with these pots. We'll plant them along the fence. We worked in comfortable silence for a while. The sun was warm, the soil rich and dark. Therapeutic work gardening. Grounding. I was with him for 2 years, Sophie said suddenly. Jake. Met him when I was 22. He seemed perfect at first. I didn't respond. Just kept digging, letting her talk at her own pace. Started small. Criticism about my clothes, my friends. Then he wanted to control where I went, who I talked to. By the end, I couldn't leave the apartment without permission. "What made you leave?" He hit me. She touched her cheek unconsciously. The bruise was faded now, yellowing at the edges. Not the first time, but something clicked. My mother stayed with a man like that her whole life. I swore I wouldn't. So I waited until he left for work, packed one bag, and ran. That took courage. Did it, I feel like a coward. I left everything, my job, my apartment. I'm 24 and I have nothing. I sat back on my heels. Sophie, listened to me. Leaving took more courage than staying ever would have. And you don't have nothing. You have your life, your freedom. Everything else can be rebuilt. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't quite believe it. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Sophie slowly come back to life. She started eating regular meals. The dark circles under her eyes faded. Her hair grew shiny and healthy again. She found a job at the Lakeside Flower Market, part-time, minimum wage, but it was something. She started saving money in a jar she kept on her dresser. Emergency fund, she told me proudly. So I never have to depend on anyone again. She helped around the house without being asked. Weeded the garden. Fixed the loose handle on the screen door. Reorganized the kitchen cabinets in a way that actually made more sense than my system. "You don't have to do all this," I told her. "You're a guest, not an employee. I know, but you gave me a safe place to land. Let me give back however I can." One evening, 3 weeks after she'd arrived, Sophie joined me on the porch at sunset. We sat in the rocking chairs Rob had built, watching the light turn the lake water gold. "I found an apartment," she said. "Nothing fancy. Studio above the hardware store downtown. But I can afford it with my job. I can move out next week." I felt a pang. I'd gotten used to having her here. The house felt less empty with another heartbeat in it. "You don't have to rush. I know, but I need to. Need to prove to myself I can do this. Can stand on my own." "I understand." She turned to me. "Mrs. Sullivan, Maggie, I don't know how to thank you. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost." "What's that?" "The belief that there are good people in the world. People who help without wanting something in return." My throat tightened. "You gave me something too, Sophie. What purpose? After everything that happened with my daughter-in-law, I felt like I'd fought so hard to keep this house, but I didn't know why. You reminded me, this house is meant to shelter people, to be a safe harbor." She smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her. "Maybe you should do this more. Open your home to women who need it." The idea planted itself in my mind like a seed. After Sophie moved out with my blue dishes as a housewarming gift and a standing invitation to Sunday dinner, I called the Lakewood Women's Center. "Diana, it's Margaret Sullivan. I've been thinking. That room, I'd like to offer it permanently. For women transitioning out of the shelter. 30 days, free housing. Give them time to find jobs, save money, get stable." Silence on the line. "Then, Margaret, are you serious?" "Completely. I have the space. I have the time. And I learned something important recently. Holding on to things too tightly destroys them. Houses are meant to be used, not hoarded. This is incredible. Do you have any idea how many women we could help with an arrangement like this? As many as need it. One at a time." We worked out the details over the next week. Simple rules. 30 days, maximum stay. Must be actively working toward independence. Job searching, saving money, getting therapy, respect shared spaces, contribute 1 weekend dinner for the household if possible. The dinner fund, as I started calling it. No drugs, no alcohol, no violence. I made a wooden sign for the front porch. Painted it myself with careful letters. The Whitfield Room, a 30-day bridge. Not a permanent solution, but a bridge between crisis and stability. That's what I could offer. The second guest was Rachel Kim, 31 with a 3-year-old son named Tyler. I've never taken someone with a child before I admitted to Diana. Rachel is special. She's been in our program for 6 months. Got her GED, completed a medical assistant training program. She has a job lined up at the clinic downtown, starts in 2 weeks. She just needs a safe place to stay until her first paycheck comes in, and she can afford an apartment deposit. What about childcare? The clinic has on-site daycare. She's all set. She just needs a break, a safe place where she and Tyler can breathe. They arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Rachel thin and tired with close-cropped hair, holding Tyler's hand. The little boy had huge dark eyes and clutched a stuffed elephant like his life depended on it. "Hi, Tyler," I said, crouching to his level. "I'm Maggie. Do you like toy cars or blocks?" He pressed his lips together, shy, then whispered, "Cars." "Well, I happen to have some cars. Want to see I'd spent the weekend at garage sales buying toys. Wooden blocks, plastic cars, board books with bright pictures. Filled a basket in the corner of the living room." Tyler's eyes went wide. He looked up at his mother for permission. "Go ahead, baby," Rachel said softly. He approached the toys like they might disappear if he moved too fast. Picked up a red car, held it like it was made of gold. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "You didn't have to do this. I wanted to. Come on, I'll show you your room." The next 3 weeks transformed the house again. Morning sounds of a child laughing. The smell of Rachel's cooking. She insisted on making dinner most nights, Korean dishes her grandmother had taught her. Tyler's toys scattered across the living room floor, bright spots of color on the old hardwood. I taught Tyler to garden. He loved the watering can, loved watching the flowers drink. "They're thirsty, Grandma Maggie," he'd shout. I didn't correct the grandma. It felt right somehow. Rachel and I would sit on the porch while Tyler played, talking about her plans. She wanted to go back to school, eventually become a nurse practitioner. Wanted to buy a house someday, give Tyler the stability she'd never had growing up. "My ex said I'd never make it on my own," she told me one evening. Said I was too stupid, too weak, that I needed him. And now I'm starting a job I earned through my own hard work. I'm raising my son in a safe place. I'm proving him wrong every single day. Good. Keep proving him wrong. Dan came to dinner one Friday and found the house full of life. Rachel cooking bulgogi, Tyler showing him the garden, me setting the table for 4. "Mom, what is all this?" "This is the Whitfield room. Rachel and Tyler are my current guests." Over dinner, Dan was quiet, watching Tyler chatter about the red car he'd found, watching Rachel talk about her new job, watching me, his mother, presiding over this makeshift family with contentment he hadn't seen in years. After Rachel put Tyler to bed, Dan helped me with dishes. "You're happy," he said. It wasn't a question. "I am. After everything that happened, Caroline, the house, all of it, you're happy. Because I'm not holding on so tight anymore. I'm letting this house be what it was always meant to be. A home for whoever needs it." He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in weeks. Dad would love this. I know he would. By summer, I'd housed 7 women. Sophie, Rachel, then Maria, domestic violence, Jessica, aging out of foster care, Keisha, fleeing human trafficking, Amanda, recovering addict, and now Trina, homeless after medical bankruptcy. The house had a rhythm now. Guests came, stayed their 30 days, moved on to independence. Some kept in touch. Some didn't. All left different. The dinner fund became a tradition. Every Friday night, whoever was currently staying in the Whitfield room cooked dinner for the household. I provided groceries, they provided cooking and company. One Friday in July, we had a full house. Sophie came back to visit. Rachel and Tyler now in their own apartment, but missing Grandma Maggie. Jessica still in residence. And Trina, who'd arrived just a week ago. Dan brought his new girlfriend, Sarah. A kind woman, a teacher who looked at my son with genuine warmth and no ulterior motives. I'd run a background check once, burned twice cautious, but she came up clean. Just a good person who saw good in my scarred son. We crowded around the dining table. The old oak table that had survived 42 years, countless dinners, and one near disaster with Caroline. Trina had made lasagna. Sophie brought wine. Rachel made Tyler's favorite cookies. The house smelled like garlic and tomato sauce and chocolate chips. Like home. Dan stood and raised his glass. "I want to make a toast." Everyone quieted. To my mom, who taught me what real strength looks like. Not holding on to things, but knowing when to open your hands and share. His voice cracked slightly. "You turned the worst thing that happened to us into the best thing you could do for others." That's heroic, Mom." "Hear, hear," Sophie called out. To Maggie, Rachel added. They all raised their glasses. I felt my eyes sting with tears. "I'm not a hero," I said. "I'm just using what I have to help where I can." "Anyone could do this, but you did do it," Jessica said quietly. "When I aged out of foster care, I slept in my car for 2 weeks. No one helped. Until you. You gave me back my dignity," Trina added. "After my medical bills destroyed my credit, my savings, everything, you gave me a place to recover without judgment. You saved my life, Keisha said simply. Her story was the darkest trafficked at 17, escaped at 23, still healing from horrors I couldn't imagine. This room, this house, it's the first place I felt safe in 6 years. Tyler climbed onto my lap, chocolate cookie crumbs on his fingers. I love you, Grandma Maggie. I held him close, breathed in his little boy scent of cookies and grass and innocence. I love you too, sweetheart. After dinner, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Dan and I sat on the porch. The summer night was a warm fireflies dancing over the lawn, the lake a sheet of black glass reflecting stars. I heard from the FBI today, Dan said. Caroline's trial is next month. How do you feel about that honestly numb? Like it happened to someone else? He paused. The paternity test came back. My heart clenched. And not mine. The baby was Marcus Blackwood's. He said it flatly, like reciting a grocery list. Emotions too big to show. I'm sorry, Dan. I'm not. If that baby had been mine, I'd be tied to Caroline forever. Now I can just move on. Start over. With Sarah. He smiled. Maybe. She's good mom. Really good. And patient with all my baggage. She seems wonderful. We sat in comfortable silence. The kind of silence only possible between people who've survived storms together. Mom, thank you. For what? For fighting. For not giving up on this house. If you had moved to Maple Ridge, if you'd let Caroline win, I'd have lost everything. My home, my mother, my dignity. You saved me by saving yourself. I took his hand. We saved each other, sweetheart. That's what family does. The anniversary of Caroline's departure fell on a Wednesday in April. I marked it by not marking it. Just another day in the Whitfield room. Current guest was Nina, 42, escaping a 20-year marriage that had slowly poisoned her spirit. But that evening, Eleanor called. I'm organizing something. Don't ask questions. Just be home at 6 tomorrow. At 5:45 the next day, cars started arriving. Sophie, Rachel and Tyler, Jessica, Keisha, Amanda, Maria, Trina, all 7 former guests, all thriving. Then Dan and Sarah, Alan Foster and his wife Patricia, Diana Martinez from the Women's Center, Eleanor, of course. My porch and living room filled with people with life with laughter. What is this? I asked, bewildered. Anniversary party, Sophie announced. 1 year since you opened the Whitfield room. 1 year of changing lives. They'd brought food gifts, photos. Someone had made a banner, the Whitfield room, a year of new beginnings. We crowded around the dining table, some sitting, some standing, Tyler on my lap as always. Rachel stood and raised her glass. To Maggie Sullivan, who showed us that houses are meant to shelter, not imprison. That strength comes from opening doors, not closing them. That family isn't just blood, it's who shows up when you need them most. To Maggie, they chorused. I couldn't speak. Just sat there with tears streaming down my face, overwhelmed by the simple truth I'd almost lost this house, fighting for the wrong reasons. Fighting to keep it mine alone. Now I understood. The house was always meant to be shared. Rob and I built it not as a fortress, but as a haven. Caroline tried to take it, yes. But in fighting her off, I'd learned its true purpose. Later, after most of the guests had left, I found Dan in Rob's office. He was looking at the photo on the desk Rob and me on our 30th anniversary. You miss him, Dan said. Every day. But I think he'd be proud of what I've done here. I know he would be. Dan pulled an envelope from his pocket. This came to my apartment. Forwarded from Caroline's old address. I thought you should see it. He handed me the envelope. Return address, Federal Correctional Institution, Lansing. Caroline's handwriting. I didn't open it right away. Put it on Rob's desk and stared at it like it might bite. After everyone left, after the house was quiet again, I sat in Rob's chair and opened the envelope. Dear Margaret, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm writing because you're the only person who might understand. Marcus is in federal prison. 23 years. I got 8 eligible for parole and 5 with good behavior. The baby Ethan was born 3 months ago. He's in foster care. Marcus's parents wanted nothing to do with him. Mine are dead. Dan made it clear he wants no contact. I lost the baby at 7 months. Stress, the doctors said. They induced labor, and he was born early but healthy. I got to hold him for 10 minutes before they took him away. I'm in therapy now. Court mandated, but I've kept going even after I met the requirement. The therapist says I have severe attachment issues stemming from childhood trauma and manipulative personality patterns. Basically, I use people because I was used. Not an excuse, just trying to understand how I became someone who would do what I did to you. To Dan. To all those other families. I grew up in foster care. 13 different homes by age 18. Learned early that love is conditional, that people are means to ends, that you survive by taking what you can before it's taken from you. Marcus recruited me when I was 21, working at a mall, barely making rent. He showed me how to target men with assets, taught me the words to say, the person to become, made it seem like justice taking from people who had too much. But you weren't someone who had too much. You were just a woman who'd built a life and wanted to keep it. And I tried to destroy that. For money. For a man who never loved me. For a dream that was always a lie. I heard about the Whitfield room. One of the women here, Andrea, stayed with you for 3 weeks last fall. She says you saved her life, that you gave her the space and time to find herself again. You could have become bitter, could have locked your doors and trusted no one. Instead, you opened your home wider. That's the kind of strength I've never had. The kind I hope to learn, even if it takes the rest of my life. I'm not asking to be one of those women. I know I'm not welcome. But I wanted you to know that what you did, standing up for yourself, showing strength without cruelty, it haunts me. In the best way. You could have destroyed me. You had the power, the evidence, the right. Instead, you just removed me from your life and kept living. That takes a kind of courage I'm only beginning to understand. Tell Dan I'm sorry. Not for the relationship that was fake from the start, but for making him doubt himself. For making him feel like his love wasn't enough. He deserves better. He always did. And tell him Ethan has his eyes. Dark brown, gentle kind. Whatever else I've done, I gave life to a piece of him. Maybe someday that will matter. I don't know if I'll ever be worthy of forgiveness. But I'm trying to be better. Caroline. I read it 3 times. Felt a complicated mix of emotions. Anger still there, still valid. Pity for the child she'd been, the woman she'd become. Sadness for the baby, for Dan, for all the lives broken by Marcus Blackwood's greed. But no desire for revenge. That had burned itself out long ago. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my desk drawer. Didn't throw it away, but didn't display it either. Just held on to it. Proof that even people who hurt us are still people. Complex, damaged, capable of change. Maybe. I called Dan and told him about the letter. About Ethan, the baby with his eyes. Long silence on the line. Then what do you think I should do? I think you should take your time. Process this. Talk to Sarah. Maybe talk to a therapist. Don't make any decisions out of guilt or obligation. The baby's innocent in all this. He is. And he deserves a good life. Whether that's with you, with adoptive parents, with whoever, he deserves love and stability. I'll think about it. A month later, Dan told me he'd applied to be Ethan's foster parent, potentially to adopt. Sarah supported the decision. They'd taken parenting classes together, prepared their apartment, opened their hearts to a child born from lies but innocent of them. You don't have to do this, I told him. I know. But Mom, you taught me something. You taught me that the right thing to do is often the hard thing. This baby Ethan, he's not responsible for Caroline and Marcus. He deserves a chance. You're a good man, Dan Sullivan. I learned from the best. 2 years after Caroline's departure, the Whitfield room had housed 23 women. Some success stories, some harder endings. But every woman who passed through left different than she arrived. Stronger, more hopeful, more herself. I was 69 now, slowing down a bit but not stopping. The garden flourished. The house stood strong. Dan and Sarah had adopted Ethan, now a chubby, happy 2-year-old who called me Gamma and loved the red toy cars I kept in the basket. On a September evening, warm and golden, I hosted what had become an annual gathering. The Whitfield Room Reunion. Current and former guests, volunteers from the Women's Center, supporters and friends. 30 people crowded into my house and spilled onto the porch. Tyler, now 5, played with Ethan and 2 other children who'd come with their mothers. The smell of grilled chicken and fresh bread filled the air. Sophie had just gotten engaged. Rachel had been accepted into nursing school. Jessica was managing a bookstore. Keisha was training to become a counselor for trafficking survivors. Each one had taken the bridge I'd offered and built themselves a new life on the other side. Diana Martinez pulled me aside. Margaret, I have something to tell you. The Lakewood Women's Center is receiving a grant to replicate the Whitfield Room model. 3 other women in the county have agreed to open their homes the same way you did. Your idea is spreading. My throat tightened. That's wonderful. It's more than wonderful. You started a movement. One house, one woman at a time. You're changing how we think about helping people in crisis. That night after everyone had left, I sat on the porch with Dan and Sarah. Ethan asleep in Sarah's arms, his dark curls falling across his forehead. "Mom, I need to tell you something," Dan said. He and Sarah exchanged a look. "What is it? We're buying the house next door. Eleanor's moving to be closer to her daughter, and we made an offer." It was accepted. I stared at him. "Next door? You're moving next door? Is that okay? I know you value your space, but we thought Ethan should grow up near his grandmother. And if you ever need help with the Whitfield room, we'd be right there." Sarah added softly, "We want Ethan to see what you do, to understand that helping others isn't optional, it's how we live." I couldn't speak. Just pulled them both into a hug, careful not to wake the baby. My son, living next door, building his life near mine but not on top of mine, raising his son to understand service, compassion, family. This was what I'd fought for. Not just the house, not just my independence, but the ability to love freely, to help openly, to know that what I built would continue after I was gone. 5 years later, on a perfect spring morning, I sit on my porch with a cup of coffee. 74 years old now, arthritis in my hands, but my mind is sharp as ever. Next door, I can hear Ethan's laughter as Dan pushes him on the swing they installed in the yard. 7 years old, starting 2nd grade with no memory of the circumstances of his birth. Just a happy child who knows he's loved. The Whitfield room is quiet this week, between guests. Sometimes the empty room makes me restless, but Diana assures me the next woman will arrive soon. There's always someone who needs a bridge. The doorbell rings. I push myself up slower than I used to, but steady, and answer the door. A young woman stands there, maybe 25, with a black eye that makeup can't quite hide, and a duffel bag clutched in white-knuckled hands. "Mrs. Sullivan, Diana Martinez sent me. She said you might have a room." I smile and step back, opening the door wide. "I do. Come in. You're safe here." She hesitates on the threshold. They always do. Taking that first step into safety feels like a risk after so long in danger. "I promise," I say gently. "No one will hurt you here. This house is for healing." She steps inside. I close the door behind her. Show her the yellow guest room, give her the key, tell her the simple rules. As I watch her sit on the edge of the bed, touching the white linens like she's afraid they'll disappear, I think about how far I've come. From the woman who almost lost everything to the woman who found purpose in sharing what she'd saved. That night I sit in Rob's office, though I think of it as my office now, and write in my journal. 5 years since Caroline. 28 women housed. Lives changed. My life changed most of all. I fought to keep this house because I thought it was mine. Learned it was never mine to keep, only mine to steward, to open, to share. Rob, wherever you are, I hope you see what we built. Not just walls and floors and windows, but a place where broken things can heal. Where lost people can find themselves. Where home means something deeper than ownership. The house still stands, and I'm still here doing what I can for as long as I can. That's enough. That's everything. I close the journal and look at Rob's photo on the desk. The man I loved for 40 years. The man who taught me that strength isn't holding on, it's knowing when to open your hands. From the guest room I hear water running. The new woman, I didn't catch her name yet, taking her first safe shower in who knows how long. Tomorrow we'll talk. She'll tell me her story or she won't. Either way, she'll stay. She'll heal. She'll move on. And I'll be here in the house that almost broke me, doing the work that saved me. The work of opening doors instead of closing them. The work of building bridges instead of walls. The work of turning pain into purpose and purpose into peace. I turn off the desk lamp and walk through my house. My home. The place Rob and I built 47 years ago that Caroline tried to steal, that now shelters whoever needs it most. Outside, the lake reflects the stars. Inside, 2 women sleep under my roof. One old, one young. One who fought to stay, one who fought to arrive. Both exactly where they're meant to be. And I whisper to the night, to Rob, to myself. Thank you for every hard moment that led here. For every person who tried to break me and only made me stronger. For this house, this life, this chance to matter. The wind rustles through Rob's lavender, still blooming after all these years. The scent drifts through the open window. Lavender means devotion. I'm devoted to this work now, for whatever time I have left. And that I realize with a smile is the best revenge. Not revenge against Caroline or Marcus or anyone who wronged me, but revenge against the lie that said I was too old, too weak, too insignificant to matter. I matter. Every woman who walks through that yellow bedroom matters. Every life we touch, we change, we save matters. I turn off the lights and go to bed in my reclaimed master bedroom in the house that's mine, but not mine, surrounded by peace I had to fight for. And I sleep, deeply, dreamlessly, safe in the home I saved by learning to share it. So what would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Have you ever had to fight for what's yours, only to learn it was never really yours at all? Comment below. I'd love to hear your stories. And if this story touched your heart, please subscribe. I have more stories coming up, tales of family justice redemption, and the power of opening doors instead of closing them. Thank you for walking with me through this journey. From Lakewood, Michigan, to wherever you're watching from, thank you. Remember, a house isn't walls. It's the people who refuse to let it fall. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is open your door.